Man, Auburn, they are really, really pushing a handful of transfers, and one really does surprise me.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay, Crosby of thebarnauburn.com, as well as other places, hanging out with us on today's edition of Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Mazda. We put the same drive into every detail, wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. We'll discuss the tournament drama. Is Auburn somehow still in? I think it's a fascinating possibility. Also, Tim Banks, maybe flying under the radar, could make a tremendous impact according to some national media. But Cole Best, like obviously Byrum Brown is a transfer guy that Auburn is pushing to make a face of this football team. Incoming quarterback. I mean, has a chance to have a really special season if he can echo what he did last year at South Florida. Yeah. But Lindsay, it really seems like Auburn is pushing a lot of Cole Best, who was USF center a year ago and a guy that we assume will be the center for Auburn this season. And, we'll see what happens with Cale Ellis if they move him around or if he's just a backup center. But I think we're seeing a lot of him, whether it's Auburn putting him in videos or posting, making sure they post a picture of him every time there's like a workout post from the official Auburn Instagram or whatever it may be. And I think that's something we need to pay attention to and listen to at this point.
The guys that they put in front of you are the guys they want you to be talking about. But like the thing that's odd to me, what I don't necessarily know here, I mean, 4-year starter at USF, moving up for his final year of eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
Are they putting him in front of us? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, is this, they are convinced he's going to be a very integral part of the offense and they want us to know him and hopefully get him into the Remington Award conversation? Or is this they're trying to sell us on the idea of Cole Best as an important part of the team and they're hoping he takes a step forward? I don't know how to feel yet.
Yeah, I'm going to go the more positive route on this. Yeah. I mean, the way Alex Golesh has talked about this guy, whether it was at Tiger Talk this past week where he was really hyping him up, or even when he talked to the media down in Mobile when he was kind of checking out the guys for the Senior Bowl stuff, he was asked about Cole Best. And I mean, he literally talked about like sleeping better at night because Cole Best came with them to South Florida. And it was in the context of having several guys from South Florida follow him. And so they don't have to do as much of an install type deal, day one of spring in just a few weeks. But still, the way he talks about Cole Best, he being Golesh, the way Alex Golesh talks about Cole Best does seem elevated. I mean, he talks about like he's some elite player, like he's this hidden gem that he gets to show off to the world next to Byrum Brown this upcoming season. And let me tell you what, if he's right, if that's the case, watch out, because if they nail the center position and they nailed some of these other tackles that they brought in through the portal, Auburn's going to have a shot. The offensive line is my biggest question about the offense. And if you nail the center position and have an all-star center, you got a shot with this style of offense that Alex Golesh and his USF guys like to run.
Yeah, I mean, given what Auburn's doing on offense, right? How you're spreading it out, but you're running the ball a lot. Like, there's a lot of responsibilities placed on the offensive line to hold up in a 5-on-4, 5-on-5 situation. The center specifically making the calls, making the adjustments, making the protections. I do think the thing that I'm a little bit, I'm not going to say concerned about, but my thought process here is he going to be able to hold up in the run game in the SEC? They're not gospel at all, but I did pull up the PFF scores for Cole Best for last year.
Yeah, what do they say?
And he came in at a 78.7 as a pass blocker, but
Solid.
a 69.1 as a run blocker. And it seems like a lot of his struggles running the ball came against the teams, that either had Florida was one of his worst games as far as a run blocker.
Yeah.
That is obviously the type of roster with the talent he's going to be facing on a day-to-day basis.
What about Miami, Lindsay? That was kind of the other, obviously, good team that they played last year.
He really struggled in pass blocking at Miami, a 60.1, but his run grade was actually one of his better ones of the year. Top 4 figure in run blocking at 70.4. So he kind of flipped from the Florida game to the Miami game. And both of those were on the road. I do think that was probably some of it too. I imagine a center would be a little bit tougher on the road simply because you're trying to call out protections and things like that in a hostile environment. But he is considered a better pass blocker than a run blocker. I just think about in the SEC. I mean, if he has some poor grades against Memphis and Navy, especially Navy with the size restrictions they're under as an academy, and Boise State and stuff, what's he going to do when you have to face a Georgia or an Alabama? I think that's the concern that I have here is, I trust him from a mental perspective to understand what to do to get folks lined up correctly. I don't necessarily know how much I trust the immediate acclimation to the SEC, given the schools that he seemingly struggled with last year.
Yeah. I think it's a reasonable concern. And, I don't want to revisionist history this. When we got this first wave of South Florida guys, whether it was, some of the defensive backs that we got early, Fred Gaskin, and then his name is Fred Gaskin. And then, the receivers that came in, a lot of folks were panicking like, oh my goodness, our whole roster is going to be South Florida guys. And I'll say what I said at the time is like, look, if you've got the skill positions, I have no issue with it. It's when you bring guys from the trenches from the lower level where I'm going to ask a few questions here. And obviously they added 2 South Florida guys up from the offensive line, Kaleb being one of them. And, I still stand by that. Like I still have some questions that you just pointed out. And I think a very clear and concise way. Does that mean, like, once again, PFF's not everything, right?
Nope.
Like, did he have to pick up different guys in pass blocking because he had to like help out in situations where, he needed to or didn't need to, that he won't have to this upcoming season? Possibly, right? Like that all just kind of depends on how it's charted. But also, there is a chance that he just gets better, but there also is a chance that Alex Golesh is right about this guy. Because once again, the way Alex Golesh talks about this dude is just sincere, intentional, and intense belief and support in Kaleb. And I think that is something where, like, at this point, like, let's just trust Alex Golesh. He's given us no reason not to. And he handpicked all of these guys to follow him from South Florida when he didn't have to. He could have gone elsewhere. His belief in guys knowing his scheme and his system and playing together as a unit seems very important to him. And having Byrum Brown take snaps from the same guy for another season is important to Alex Golesh, and therefore it should be important to everybody who cares about Auburn.
And on your point of having to do different things in certain matchups, like Miami's defensive line was considered one of the better ones in college football last year. So like him getting a lower score because he's helping out guards and stuff, I don't think should be held against him. I do think the continuity matters, right? On the offensive line, we talk about the chemistry of the 5 guys as a whole, and you kind of grade them on those 5 guys. But I do think the center quarterback connection, especially on an offense that likes to go incredibly fast like this one does, those 2 guys having the continuity, having been together for 3 or 4 seasons or whatever it was at USF, and knowing each other, I do think that matters because, like, clearly you're going to the goal is to have everybody know what to do in every situation. But we've seen in college football sometimes when things break down, if your center, quarterback, and a receiver are on the same page, you can still make things happen. When you're going with speed, knowing when to hit the pedal on the tempo, knowing when to, hey, we need to slow it down. We need to spike the ball versus something else. All of that's important. And also, I think, too, the way the offense, I touched on this already. I'm repeating myself. Sorry. But like knowing the way the offense works, knowing how to set the protections and where the vulnerabilities are in certain play calls is a big deal. And that does help the year one install. My hope would be that Kai Ellis would have opportunities to learn the offense on the field and then be able to move to center for 2027.
Yeah, whether he's a backup and then he's the guy in 27, or if he's a guard this year and then moves there to 2027. I think regardless, it could be good for Ellis for sure. It is the hiring of Tim Banks as co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach flying under the radar. It might be, according to national media. That's next, right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Lindsay, man, we needed that this weekend. Goodness gracious.
2-hour rain delay on Saturday?
Yeah.
For baseball, followed by basketball after it?
Whew. Man, big day for Auburn fans. And look, 5 Hour Energy, that's what you want to kind of give you that kick in the afternoon, or if you got a late one coming up. 5 Hour Energy, they got a flavor draft going on. The board is set. The flavors are ready. My number one pick in the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft, it is the grape. That is my go-to. I've said it over and over and over again. I'm waiting to find the confetti craze in store. I may have to just go to 5hourenergy.com and order it. Also available at Amazon, but looking forward to trying many flavors of 5 Hour Energy. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Lindsay, we talk about it in sports all the time, right? It's not just about talent. It's about fit, right? I think we've had that conversation a bunch with the transfer portal. It's no different than hiring for small businesses. In the minute we've been talking about Indeed, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast, Indeed.com/podcast. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you so much for making Locked on Auburn your first listen every single day. Want to make sure you guys know about the Everydayer Club. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, now's the time. Again, you get ad-free shows and access to our group chat on Discord. And if you're signed up before the NCAA tournament tips off, you can get into our Everydayer Club bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win Locked On merch. Should be a lot of fun. Right now, you can use code MARCH to get your first month free. Head to lockedonauburn.supercast.com. There's no reason to not try it. Use promo code MARCH to get your first month free. All right.
We should make merch that says not a state.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on that. People would love that. Some people, you would either love that or hate it. There's no in between. So Tim Banks is probably one of the coaching hires that I've talked about the least. On Three's Chris Lowe put out a list of college football hires poised to make a major impact in 2026. And Tim Banks was on there, co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach. And just kind of a quick recap, just because we haven't talked about him a ton there. He was a big part of Tennessee's defense from 2021 to 2025. And in 2024, he became the first defensive coordinator in Tennessee history to be named a Broyles Award finalist. I mean, we've talked about the experience of this coaching staff. And I mean, I guess I've done a disservice here because when we talk about the experience, like I usually don't mention Tim Banks, but we've talked about how loaded the safeties room is. You know, Kaleb Harris, we still all believe in, despite him maybe taking a slight step back this past season. But this is a loaded safety room, right? I mean, we've talked about this with, I mean, we mentioned Fred Gaskin, but obviously Sylvester Smith coming back. They brought in Jack Luttrell from Arizona, Eric Winters, Fagans. I mean, it is a loaded, Champ Anthony. Yeah. It's a loaded room And really, like, if you need Auburn to maximize on the talent that they have on the roster, you need Tim Banks to be that guy for the safeties this season.
Feels like both the ceiling and the floor of the safeties room is really high this upcoming season.
For sure.
The thing that stands out to me about Tim Banks is wherever he's been, Tennessee for the 5 years, Penn State before that, his teams were always exceptionally good at tackles for loss.
What was his role at Penn State, Lindsay? Do you have that in front of you?
I do. He was co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Penn State.
Okay, same job.
So it's same job he has now, which is a big deal to me. When he was at Tennessee for those 5 years, they led the SEC in tackles for loss during that stretch. They were top 16 in the country in all of his seasons in that category. And it's having safeties that are flexible enough to get involved in the run game, but still maintain their pass coverage responsibilities. To me, that's kind of like, we always talk about linebackers who can do both and how that can unlock a lot for your offense. For your defense. I feel like safeties who physically can stand up in the run game, but also still help defend the pass is a big deal for you when you face teams that are very good running the ball.
Yeah.
And so the fact that Tim Banks' defenses have always been good at doing that, whether it was Penn State, whether it was here, when he was at Central Michigan and Cincinnati and Illinois, all of that. His Cincinnati defense in 2011 led the nation in tackles for loss. Like, it's always been a thing for him. So I feel really good about Auburn's ability. One great timed tackle for loss can absolutely stall a drive out, can shut down a scoring opportunity, keep a team off the board. And
it could be like a sack. I mean, depending on the situation.
Yeah. And like things like that, those are the things in the close games that can make a difference, right? When you have a talent advantage and you're expected to win, that's not as big. But when you're trying to get an upset over a Georgia or right now in Alabama or whoever it might be, being able to generate negative plays is a big deal to help you do that. And I feel like bringing in Tim Banks as co-defensive coordinator under our boy DJ Durkin, I feel like it's a big deal as far as not only having Auburn's defense be like a bend but don't break, but being more aggressive and actually forcing the action and putting teams behind the chains.
Yeah, I also love the positional versatility and role versatility that you just mentioned, as far as being able to stop the run as well as be effective in coverage, because I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches of guys that should be able to do that. And we've seen be able to do that. I trust Champ Anthony to stop somebody in the run game. I also trust him in coverage. Kaleb Harris, we know he's able to do it. Where there's some inconsistencies this last year that really cost Auburn in some key situations. Yes, but we know that he's capable of doing that. Sylvester Smith.
Winters.
Yep, Eric Winters, Fagan, Sylvester Smith. All of those guys I trust in the run game as well as the passing game. So if he can have all these guys take that step forward, I think it's going to take a lot of stress, hopefully, off of Auburn's corners on the outside, as well as the linebackers. And that's, obviously would be huge.
Another underrated part of that too is I'm a believer in linebackers getting better at coverage under a guy like this, who understands how to coach them to do both, right? And I know he's not the linebackers coach. Durkin's the linebackers coach, but it's still like knowing when to do one or the other, because often they're at opposite odds. You're attacking forward for the rush. You're retreating in pass coverage. Being able to understand things like that, I think it's going to be big for a guy like a DeMarcus Riddick, Bryce Dees, guys like that, who we feel really good about their ability to withstand things at the line of scrimmage. But it's like, hey, can you get out in coverage and still make things happen?
Was one of the pleasant surprises with Elijah Melendez. We thought he was going to come in and just be a thumper, because he looks like the traditional, like old school linebacker that will just hit the crap out of you. And then, you just hope a tight end doesn't, moss him or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he has 2 interceptions as a true freshman and kind of limited playing time down the stretch there. So
same idea.
No, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you on all of that. This weekend was crazy. in, basketball and in baseball. We'll talk a little bit of baseball too, but obviously big major questions. Can Auburn somehow make the tournament? Joe Lunardi says, yeah. That's next right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. As far as an Auburn player moving the game forward, I'll go with Dahad. Dahad's been better over the last few weeks. Hasn't turned into, a bunch of wins, but he has been more efficient when it comes to scoring the basketball. Mazda puts the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there is what makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Final few minutes on today's edition of Locked on Auburn. Obviously, Auburn gets throttled by Alabama. The final score wasn't as bad as it looked, thankfully, but still, all of us who watched it, that was just not a fun way to spend a Saturday night. Thank goodness Auburn baseball swept. More on them in a second.
Yep.
But Sunday morning, a lot of Auburn fans reacting in different ways to Joe Lunardi having Auburn as the last 4 teams in, even after Saturday's loss. Are there some assumptions being made in that? Possibly. Should those assumptions be made, Lindsay? No, they shouldn't. They absolutely shouldn't. There's talk that, okay, if the assumption is they'll win a game or 2 this week in the SEC tournament, and I just don't know how. I don't know how you can assume that at this point.
Yeah, it really, to me, it feels like you need to win more than a game or 2. And I think he actually maybe clarified a little bit later in the day on Sunday about no, they need to make the semifinals or the finals of the SEC tournament.
Oh, did he?
I want to say he clarified that a little more in depth later in the day.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really we knew going in that the schedule was one of the hardest in the country. And I think that's what's keeping them afloat right now.
Yeah.
Is knowing that hey, Auburn is really they've been tested, and they have Stephen Pearl made this point. They have one of the best wins in the country when they took down Florida. But at the same time, it's just they're not done. The work's not finished. They've absolutely got to do more. And I just don't necessarily know if I trust this Auburn team to get the run in the SEC tournament that they have to make. I mean, they have to take down Mississippi State in game 1. The next day they get Tennessee. Then they get Vanderbilt, 3 games in 3 days, just to make it to probably number 1 Florida again.
Yeah, which, losing to Florida wouldn't hurt you. But
no.
I think in that situation, I feel a lot more. Then they would be 19-16. I feel a lot better about that if that were the case. I think that's his point, really. Lunardi puts for those who don't follow him on Twitter, he puts out a one sheet, it almost looks like what you would think a cliche PDF would look like, but there's a lot of info on it.
Yeah.
One of his headlines is Auburn Saga. Hard to imagine a 16-15 team getting an at-large bid and the last team in. Tigers very likely will not. Tigers very likely will not. However, Auburn has a slightly better resume and the best win among any team chasing that spot. ... for now is what he says. So
yeah, it's
Steven said that they had the best win in college basketball at Florida. Mm-hmm. Hard to really argue against that. Should that be weighted as much as it seems to be by folks who make brackets? I don't know. I think that's a different discussion, but that kind of stuff does matter, especially when you're splitting hairs late on this. This doesn't feel like a tournament team for sure. And I kind of resisted that for a long time. But hey, go out and beat Mississippi State. Do what you can if you can beat Tennessee, and let's just see what happens.
Yeah, it's his first 4 out, Indiana, Virginia Tech, Stanford, New Mexico. Like a lot of that's going to depend if Auburn wins 2 games in the tournament and those teams stumble in their tournaments, then there you go. Like it's not Auburn in a vacuum here, but as the team that holds the last spot, the job is really just winning you're in. Now the question is how much can they win? And when they do eventually lose, I don't think any of us expect them to win the tournament. When they do eventually lose, does it come late enough like it's a good enough team where it doesn't drag you down in these rankings? That's the hard part.
Yeah, if you go 2-1, if you beat Mississippi State, you beat Tennessee, you lose to Vandy, like, is that enough? I think you need help. Like, you need those other teams around you to struggle, and you need to make sure like no bids are stolen by some of these smaller conferences that are 1-bid leagues. So we'll see, but surprised at the mixed emotion. I mean, there's a lot of people reacting to Lenardi's thing Sunday morning, and they were like, please let it end, or I can't watch this team anymore. To where I want to be like, what are we doing then? Like, why would you not want Auburn to get a shot? I mean, how many times do you see these teams that sneak in and they get a win or two that they're not supposed to? Like, why would you not want this team to have that opportunity, especially when we've seen the ceiling of this team?
I have never understood the idea about rooting against your team. And a lot of Braves fans feel like they're doing that right now too. All the injuries and things the Braves have had. And they're like, these guys are terrible. And I can't watch them. Like, I hope they just lose to learn a lesson. And I'm like, that's like,
can you imagine like to use your example of like the Braves, can you imagine them being like a solid team and then, they're kind of like firmly in the postseason, and then last 3 weeks of the season, they fall apart and they like, make the play-in game or whatever.
Grab the final wild card seat on the last day.
Yeah,
of the season,
and then it's like, well, I hope we don't get it because we don't deserve. It's like, no, you get in and you see what happens.
Yeah, number 6 teams in the postseason have made the World Series before. Like, the idea of rooting against your team is always weird to me. I'll never understand.
You say you pull for these players and you pull for this school and all that, and it's like to say you'd rather like miss the tournament than not go. I'm shocked at how much I've seen that. So
I will say a team who, as of right now, I'm not worried about missing the tournament. The Auburn Tigers baseball team.
Great weekend for those guys, sweeping Winthrop, more like lose-throp. Am I right?
I've not heard that joke except for 3 times this weekend. It's still funny though.
It's funny every time. Yes.
24 runs scored by Auburn. 1 run allowed. 1. It's not bad, Zach. That's not bad. And here,
it's not bad.
Thing, and we talked about this so much leading up to the season, both here and on the Barn Baseball Show. The question we had was, hey, the offense is going to be good. Can the pitching hold their own? And what happens? The pitching is the strength of this team. Like they've looked virtually just untouchable. And I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't really know. Like, it's hard to see them losing another game at this rate. Now, clearly they will. Conference play starts next week. But blows my mind, Zach. Blows my mind how good this team has been on the mound.
So, I mean, let's talk briefly about this week. They host UAB Tuesday. Tomorrow at 6.
Yep.
And I always feel like UAB, South Alabama, Jack State, like they're always kind of tricky because, the in-state teams are really going to want.
Yeah, they're throwing their best guys against you. I heard Daryl complain about
it seems like we always struggle in those games. So, one, how is UAB as a team so far is my first question. And then Missouri, shockingly, I don't know if they've only got like 2 losses, right? I thought I had the standings up.
They are
like 12-2 or something.
They are 13-2. But unlike Auburn, Missouri has not played anybody of caliber, right?
No one, dude.
Mount St. Mary's, they played them in Florida. They went to Florida to play them. They played Florida Atlantic and to their credit, they've been on the road, right? They played road games. Then they played New Haven. They played Arkansas Pine Bluff, so not University of Arkansas Razorbacks, but Arkansas Pine Bluff,
Arkansas of the Pine Bluff variety, if you will.
Arkansas Hair Care and Tire Center, not the actual University of Arkansas. Doubleheader against North Dakota State, which is a juggernaut in football, not in baseball. And then they played UIC.
What a state.
It is a state, thankfully. Yes. Shout out to
North
LSU
Dakota is a
losing to
state.
McNeese State, not a state.
Correct.
And then they played UIC for 4. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even know where UIC is.
What does UIC stand for in the comments? Let us know. Wrong answers only, please.
Yes. Let us know what school that is. I'm going to guess it's University of Illinois, Chicago, because that makes the most sense. But at the same time, I really want to think it's like the University of Independent Clowns or something.
Nice.
And like that's who they've played. So I would argue they've not faced pitching to the caliber of Auburn's. They've not faced offense to the caliber of Auburn's.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't have very high expectations for how competitive this is going to end up being next weekend. Because if you look at last year, they were they were terrible in conference play as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually tested themselves against tough teams. They played Penn State and UConn and UCF, a bunch of those schools early, and then they still got boat raced in conference play. Like they got swept by LSU. They didn't win a conference game, Zach. I need you to know this. Last year, they did not win a conference game until... Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Until the 9th conference weekend.
That's insane.
They swept Texas A&M in week 9, and those were the only conference wins they had all year. They went 3-27 in conference last year.
That's brutal.
And that's what tested themselves against good teams early. This is clearly not a lot of good teams early. So I feel good about Auburn once they get past UAB this week.
Yeah, and then obviously, you want to stack as many SEC wins as you can. So
yes.
Hard to sweep a team, but if you're going to do it, if you're going to predict one, which I know you don't like to do, you don't like to predict sweeps, but if you're going to predict one, this is the one.
This is the one. This is the one.
So cool. Yeah, we'll try to go live tomorrow night after the UAB game for a little midweek action. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
The Auburn baseball content, both here and thebarnauburn.com and the Barn Baseball Show. The Atlanta Braves content, bravestoday.com. We're doing multiple newsletters every single day between now and opening day, so check that out. bravestoday.com and wherever you get your podcasts.
Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.